Hello, beautiful friends, and welcome to episode number 6 of the Biohacked Life. And I am nerding out right now because I am here with my good friend, Dr. Beverly Lansden. Doc, how are you doing today?
I'm fabulous. How are you?
I am great.
Good.
So the reason I wanted to bring Dr. Beverly on is the first time we ever had a chance to have a one-on-one conversation. I never told you this. I started asking you about some research, and when I asked you about the research, your entire posture changed. Your eyes lit up, you got a big smile on your face, and I swear you grew like 3 inches as soon as you started talking. So I'm like, okay, this is a nerd of my own heart. I can bring her on and we can go deep into some science. So that is like the main reason why I wanted to have you on here, because I know how excited you get about the same nerdism that I do when it comes to research. So starting out the podcast, I always like to ask a couple softball questions to get things going. What is something today that you're gracious for?
My wonderful husband.
Ah, yes. He is a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually sitting here staring at us right now. No, Tom is a great guy. And yes, we were both thankful for him, especially like how welcoming and loving he is. Awesome. And here's an interesting question. So in life, we all listen to music. We all love music. And in sports, you have a walkout song. Like if you're playing baseball, everyone has a walkout song. If you had to have a walkout song for life, what would it be? And oh, by the way, she's like a freaking rock star dancer too.
We used to be more rock star because we danced a lot more often, but we've had a lot of lessons.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So, okay. So if you had to have a walkout song for life, what would it be?
It would be a tango.
A tango? Mm-hmm. Is there like one in particular?
I don't think so.
No? But a tango.
A tango.
Why a tango?
Because that was our favorite dance.
Ah, so there's some emotional attachment there to it.
Oh, yeah. It's very different and it's very fun.
Awesome. Awesome. So I want to get into a little bit of your background just so people kind of understand where you're coming from and why you're so awesome at what you do. Where did you go to school?
I went to high school in Cincinnati, and I went to University of Cincinnati, and I graduated with a degree in medical technology.
Medical technology.
Mm-hmm. So
What does that mean exactly?
Actually, a medical technologist does all the lab work in a hospital lab.
Okay.
But I then went into research at University of Cincinnati Hawksworth Blood Center. So I was specializing in blood testing, like the blood bank. I was supervisor of the blood bank, and then I went into research in immunohematology.
So define that for the audience out there.
It's mostly, people are different. Their blood's different.
Right.
And some people can't get blood transfusions from other people, depending on their blood type, and also lots of other blood groups. And so my research was to find compatible blood for people with very, very, very rare blood.
That's awesome.
It was fun.
So you're basically under the microscope, and just were you like mixing the blood and like seeing if it would reject or accept?
Precisely.
Awesome.
And I love the research. I remember one day they gave me this specimen that was not compatible with anybody else in the whole wide world. And so we had freezers full of rare blood. And so I set up a big panel and tested against lots and lots, and I found one that was compatible. And I went to the researcher who's in charge of the whole Hawksworth Blood Center, and I said, something must be wrong. I found one that's compatible. And he went, holy cow pie. Repeat it right away.
Make sure that's real.
And and that was part of the reason why we ended up with so many research articles on PubMed, because we had something, again, like nobody else had.
So y'all had a bunch of rare blood that you could match. And so guys, for those of you who kind of understand this, like on pubmed.gov, which is the national database of research, it's where the doctors publish their research, and then it's peer reviewed by other professionals.
Which is important.
Very important. She's got over 20, right?
I do.
Over 20 published papers on PubMed. That's a big deal. That's a lot of published research. Like most people have they get really, really excited about having one piece of peer-reviewed published research, yet you've got 20. Why is peer-reviewed, like you hear that term, why is that so important?
Well, the question is, how do you know who to believe?
Right.
And there's lots of different ways to look at that. But as far as science, you could have, a company could have a product that they want to have science behind. So they hire somebody to do science for them.
Right.
But they can just report what supports what they want people to hear.
Exactly.
So you have to be skeptical. You have to be very skeptical. And on PubMed, they have peer reviews, which means your article, your research paper, they take your name off of it and they give it to 3 experts, and the author doesn't know who's reviewing it either. So it's to make it more above all the possible ways that people could connive to get something published that wasn't 100% true.
Right.
And once it's on PubMed, so that doctors and professionals can trust it.
Right.
It's wonderful to have that resource.
So it's basically attempting to take the bias out of the research
As much as possible.
and just be subjective, 100%.
Objective.
Objective, yes, that's what I meant to say. Okay, so yes, peer-reviewed research is very important because in my background, health and wellness, I've seen a million different supplements. I'm a supplement junkie. Like I love researching it. And you would see this company put out a new study, and of course they paid for it. And you're looking at it, you're like, okay, how do I believe this? But you're right. If it's peer-reviewed and they're peer-reviewing it by 3 random people, at that point you have an outside opinion looking at this without an agenda that can say, is this valid or not? One of the funniest ones that I always point to is everybody always says breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And that's what the government's always said. That's what the USDA said. But when you look at why they say that, and you look at the research that they cite when they say that, you got to trace the money.
It's cereal, breakfast cereal, or somebody.
It's Dr. Kellogg
Yeah.
of Kellogg cereals. He said that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. If a big company that makes cereal says that breakfast is the most important meal of the day, he might be a little biased in saying that. So yeah, you always have to check and see where the research is coming from, because you and I both know in today's world of the free flow of information, there's a lot of bad information out there.
Absolutely. You there are bloggers, of course. Don't believe bloggers. There's other websites like, especially for science, that are more scientific. But the bloggers, one will contradict the other one, and they're both coming down your screen next to each other.
Right.
So,
Yeah, who do you believe?
what's that worth?
Exactly. What are your favorite ways? Like if you're interested in a topic, what are your favorite ways to research it?
Well, if it's anything scientific, I definitely go to PubMed first. And there's another little trick that we do with scientific research. And there's courses, college courses called Probability and Statistics.
Oh yeah, I took them.
Did you?
Oh yes.
And so we can calculate probability that the data is accurate. And
Was it a p factor?
it's a p-value.
P-value, yes.
So if they, so the lower that number is, the stronger the proof, the scientific proof of whatever the statement is. So if you have a p-value of 0.05, that's 5/100ths. That means there's a 5 out of 100 chance that that result is not true.
Okay.
And the smaller that number, the stronger the scientific proof. So if I pull up a research article and the p-value is 0.0001, that's 1/10,000th. That means there's a 1 in 10,000 chance that the results of that study happened just by chance and not by the structure of the study.
Gotcha. Okay. So that basically, like if somebody's trying to prove a point, the lower that number is, the farther away from 1 that number is, the less likely it is to be true.
No, the less likely it is that it was false. It's so true, like 0.0001 is so true. No more studies are necessary,
Right.
ever.
Love it. Love it.
Can't get any stronger proof.
Okay. Awesome. So, we see all this, especially on social media. We see like, oh, there's the latest health fad, or hey, do this, eat this, not that. And people always believe what they read on social media, which was a lot of times put out by Fred in his basement, with no actual scientific evidence. But when you see that kind of stuff, I know what I do when I see that kind of stuff is I immediately, if I see something that I'm like interested in, I'll immediately go to PubMed and do the real research and see if it's actually got any science behind it. Because you're right, there is so much bad information out there. And what I always say is people always believe the loudest voice, not the right voice. I mean, you're very soft-spoken. But you're grounded in science. You know how to read the science. You know how to read the studies to say, is this true? Is this not? Does this make sense? Does this not? So you're doing all this research into blood types and blood work. What made you transition from that to being an endocrinologist?
Well, I had the best research position in Cincinnati, Ohio, if not the only. And I thought my boss guy who was in charge of the department was pretty old, but he was only 45. But I was afraid he was going to retire, and then I couldn't move up.
Right.
So I said, well, what would if I was going to, I want to always be able to move up. What would I do if I could do anything in the whole wide world that I wanted to do?
I love that question.
And really, this doesn't sound real academic, but I really wanted to lose weight. And I really wanted to help other women and people lose weight. And it was pretty obvious to me that nobody really had a handle on that. So
They're still fighting that battle.
They are. I said, I'm going to figure this out, and then I'm going to share it. But I would never want to hurt anybody, so maybe I better be a doctor. So I went and signed up for medical school, and I got in. And about 9 years later, I finished medical school and 3 years of internal medicine and 2 years of endocrinology, because it seemed to be that people who were overweight had endocrine problems, diabetes and high blood pressure and all that. So I wasn't learning what I was wanting, like about how to lose weight, but I was learning all about the side effects or the detrimental effects of obesity. And so I was happy with that. And so then finally I was like a couple months from finishing up my endocrinology fellowship, and I asked my mentor, am I ever going to learn anything about nutrition?
Oh, that's such a good question.
Or about
I wanted to ask you that.
about weight management? And there's a long pause, and she said, no, doctors don't do that. This was 1988, okay?
Oh.
That was like almost 30 years ago. And so that was the end of the discussion. Well, what was the other thing she said? Obesity is a cosmetic problem.
Oh, it's a cosmetic problem.
That's what I learned in my, not medical school, but my endocrinology fellowship by my mentor.
It's a cosmetic
problem, 1988.
So are they trying to tell you like it has like it's just a physical appearance problem, like it doesn't have health?
That's what they believe. That's what doctors were taught in 1988.
Oh yeah, makes sense.
Then in 2015, the American Medical Association and the Endocrine Society decided to declare obesity a disease finally. That was like 27 years after I asked that question.
Okay, I want to ask you this question because in my head, this is kind of debatable. So when I, in my head, classify a disease, I think a disease, in my terms, is something that you did not have a choice in getting. By meaning you didn't, like, with obesity to me, you're actively making choices that lead to the weight. Where when I think in my head of disease, I'm thinking like HIV, AIDS, cancer.
You just caught it.
Right. What's the difference there? Like, am I totally off base here? Because to me, I was obese my entire life. But looking back, it was a product of decisions I was actively making. And while a lot of those decisions were subconscious, I know that. But it was still a decision. I was making a decision to put food in my mouth. I was making a decision to not exercise and to eat the way I was eating. So is that really a disease at that point?
Yes.
Okay. Why?
A disease is a malfunction of the body. And the other thing I learned in that same year in wrapping up my endocrinology, and that same mentor said, she says, you know what they're saying now? They're saying that all disease is caused by inflammation. And I said, all? I said, like even high blood pressure? She said, all. And that's oxidative stress. It's that word inflammation has kind of been replaced by oxidative stress, which is kind of a technical term that most people can't intuitively figure out what it means. But it means inflammation and cellular damage from free radicals. A lot of people have heard of free radical molecules in the body. So that's the basis of a disease.
And you learned that in 88.
I learned none of that in 88. I learned most of that in 2007 when I got board certified in anti-aging and regenerative medicine.
Okay.
But in 88, my endocrine mentor told us as a class that all disease, now they are saying, whoever they is, that all disease is caused by inflammation, and that's oxidative stress.
Right.
They didn't call it that then.
They called it inflammation.
Yeah.
So in 88, you were first told that inflammation leads to disease.
All disease.
All disease. All disease comes from inflammation. Interesting. That goes pretty far back. And we're going to talk about that a little more. So you believe that, okay, so for obesity, how is inflammation directly correlated to obesity? I mean, I understand like once you're obese, there's inflammation, but with inflammation, is there like something inflamed that leads to someone being obese?
I'm not sure if I have any science on that exactly, but most things come down to what we're eating and how much exercise we're getting and how good our sleep is and all these things that we can control.
Right.
And the drugs have just kind of distracted us from the real problem.
They have.
They're trying to fix symptoms, and not really go to the cause, which is what you're eating and what you're doing and how you're taking care of your body. So obesity is from how much, it's not just how much you eat, but it's what you eat. And
exactly.
It has to be really preferably organic because there's so much additives and effects of pesticides and fertilizers and all that the food isn't what our grandmother's food was.
No, it is not.
And there's other things like, gluten. They say our wheat has 100 times more gluten than our grandmother's wheat.
It's a total different species of plant than they were eating back when, ancient times when, Jesus was walking the earth. That was a total different bread than we're eating right now. And it had a lot more vitamins, minerals, and nutrients in it. And now we're just eating this GMO'd out stuff that probably just combines ingredients together. I don't even know what it really is. Okay, so let's talk about inflammation. Inflammation is a huge topic from my health coaching background, definitely not a doctor. But from my health coaching background, like I would see the inflammation in my clients, whether it's from the physical like swelling or like you could just like see it in their face sometimes. You could see it in the way they're walking. If I had a client, for instance, like today, one of my clients walked in and I could tell he had a good weekend. And by good weekend, I mean a fun weekend. And by fun weekend, I mean he was not eating the things he should have been eating. And I could just like, I could tell by the way he was walking in, the look on his face, and like, dude's got some inflammation right now. But it's not always that surface, is it?
No. And it's not even always bad. God made inflammation for us to be able to kill bacteria, make our body able to heal itself, get rid of fungus and cancer cells and all of that. But after a point, then all that inflammation has to subside and go away. And that anymore, it doesn't. It just goes somewhere else. Like
Why is that?
That's a good question. Because of, I think we're just always making more free radicals because of the toxins that we're exposed to, and the free radicals are molecules that damage other molecules and damage cells. And we just can't seem to get a handle on that. There's so many.
And I think one of the big things that's leading to the amount of inflammation and oxidative stress in today's world is, yes, we're putting a lot of chemicals in our body. Even the stuff we're putting on our skin is full of chemicals, and your skin's your largest organ. But I think a lot of that too is human beings are designed with this amazing fight or flight function, where if we're in the bushes and a tiger jumps out, like, we've got to run. We've got to either stand there and fight, or we've got to run. Like, that's just it's a primal animalistic instinct inside of us. But we're not meant to be in a fight or flight mode 24/7. Today's world, with cell phones, stressed out jobs, people overworking, single parents, just like everything people are going through right now, it's almost like we're in a chronic state of being in fight or flight.
You're right.
As an endocrinologist, when you're in a chronic state of being stressed out, what does that do to your body? Nothing
works. We have a hormone called cortisol. And it has to have a peak and a valley during the day so you can sleep at night. And when you're stressed and the cortisol is high, it stays high, you don't sleep. But a lot of other processes get inhibited as well. And, we give people steroids which is not a really good idea, but cortisol is a steroid. So it kind of creates that high level intentionally.
Right.
But yeah, we have to be happy. We have to relax and be happy. That's part of being healthy.
It is. So a new study came out last week or the week before, and I don't have the actual citation up right now, but it was looking at longevity, and people, like, they're still trying to figure out the fountain of youth, and they're looking to what common variables are there in these cultures that have the longest lifespan, and they're finally getting away to it being diet and exercise as much as they're looking at your mental health. And one of the biggest correlating factors in longevity is a sense of community and relationships. On the flip side of that, there was a study published, and it said that loneliness, which is a growing problem in the world right now, especially with technology and not having those close interpersonal relationships. But if somebody was really struggling with their loneliness, loneliness is actually worse for you than smoking 14 cigarettes a day.
I believe it.
And it's got to be due to cortisol levels. If you're lonely, of course, like, you're stressed out because of it, and you're feeling depressed and dealing with a lot of negative anxiety, and will ever find someone. And it's probably just pulsing that cortisol through your body nonstop every day. And when I read that it was actually worse than smoking 14 cigarettes a day, I was blown away. I knew chronic cortisol was bad, because, like, acute cortisol is actually helpful. It'll help you burn fat. It'll help you work out. Like, it's got some positive benefits. But chronic cortisol,
that's bad.
It's terrible. And when I saw that study, I'm like, that just really hit home to how bad chronic cortisol actually was. I was blown away by 14 cigarettes a day.
That is staggering.
I don't know how many are actually in a pack, but it sounds like a lot to me.
I don't know, 10 maybe.
Yeah, I have no clue. So I think
20.
Yeah, I think a lot of people right now are in a state of chronic cortisol, and they don't recognize it. They don't understand it. Did you see, when you were practicing endocrinology, you're since retired, but when you were practicing endocrinology, did you see it a lot?
High cortisols? Absolutely. We didn't test for it regularly, because we didn't know, I think, what we would treat it with. The other problem
That
with
was going to be my next question. But go
going,
ahead.
going to medical school is they teach you to listen to the person long enough to figure out what drug they need. Isn't that sad?
That is terrible. Are you
It is-
serious?
I am. I am serious. Now that's to be an MD. Now,
Right.
now there's functional medicine and integrative medicine and of course naturopathic medicine who are open and want to use natural things rather than
Right.
drugs. Thank goodness. But unfortunately, the MDs didn't get any of that.
Guys, did y'all hear what she just said? A doctor is trained to listen to enough symptoms to give you a drug. And the analogy I always use...
That was then. That was like long,
Right.
long time ago. But
and let's
still.
be honest, there's a lot of money still in drugs.
Oh.
So I'm sure that that's still being taught. The analogy I always use when it comes to really the sick care industry, which is what you're describing, it's not the healthcare industry. I mean, the analogy I always use is like you're looking at a tree and you see a brown leaf on the tree. Well, instead of going to like the roots and giving the roots the nourishment, the water, the nutrients it needs to systemically create change, you say, okay, what can I do to fix that brown leaf? Well, do I prune it? Do I just put some fertilizer on it? Like, what can I do for that brown leaf? When the brown leaf should be a signal that there's something wrong with the tree. It's, you know, our healthcare, sick care industry diagnoses a symptom, not the problem.
Absolutely. I do think that's going to change, but it's going to change slowly. Just because doctors aren't comfortable doing something that's outside of what is called the standard of care.
Okay, define that for everyone.
Standard of care is what all the drug companies and all the other doctors and the FDA agree that we should do in a given situation. And there may not even be any science behind it, or it may be wrong. But it's a standard of care because that's what we're taught to do, and that's what everybody does, even if it is wrong. But now, hopefully that'll change fast, but it won't.
Right.
It's going to take a long, long time, especially doctors can be sued for using a natural thing instead of the standard of care.
I love these bombs you're dropping today, but go ahead.
And it's not as bad as it used to be. I mean, they used to be killed for using natural remedies.
Wow.
And hopefully that's been brought to light and eliminated. But yeah, the standard of care of using non-drugs is in its infancy.
Right.
It's in its infancy.
So if somebody like came in with obesity, okay, so you're an endocrinologist, how many hours of nutrition did you take in college?
Zero. They
What's,
taught me
what's like the standard now? Do you know?
probably 1.
1 hour?
They taught us, when I asked if I could learn something about nutrition, she said, okay, why don't you write a paper on the vitamins? I said, I already know about the vitamins.
Right.
So I didn't really learn anything, but I did have to do a paper.
You did some work.
Didn't keep my mouth shut. What was your question?
Well, basically what I'm getting at is a doctor, it's like somebody comes in with high blood pressure or like borderline high blood pressure, borderline diabetes. Why is metformin the first response? Why is a statin the first response? Why can't, okay, you're borderline. Why don't we just clean up your diet? Here, try eating this, not that. Try exercising. And then if the problem doesn't go away or if it gets worse, when you've done that, then we can address it medically. Like why can't doctors do that?
That's not what they were taught to do, and they're afraid to do it. But it can be done, and it should be done.
Right.
Absolutely.
It should. And it just, like, I totally agree there is a place in this world for medications. And while I think that they're kind of a means to an end, and most of them should not be permanent in someone's life, I just think there's a lot of, like what you just said, okay, here's a symptom, let's diagnose that symptom. One of our mutual friends always tells a story about his dad with Parkinson's. And he was on 20 different medications, and only 4 of those 20 medications was actually for Parkinson's. He got on the 4 for Parkinson's and then started having a side effect. Well, he got to have another medication for the side effect. Well, then that medication was given another side effect, so he's got to have another medication for the side effect of the first medication.
You don't have to be real brilliant to realize that there's something wrong here.
There's something very wrong here if I'm on 20 medications and only 4 of them are for the real reason that I came to see you in the first place.
And this is kind of another example, but everybody's on a statin now, and statins don't work
Right.
if you really research it. And they have serious side effects.
But aren't statins the largest moneymaker for pharmaceuticals?
I'm sure.
I think statins have the highest revenue in pharmaceuticals. But yeah, everyone's on a statin right now, and it's getting younger and younger. That's the crazy part. I mean, I'm 34 now, and I'm seeing people my age that are now getting prescribed statins. I'm like, hey, bro, just clean up your diet. Quit eating pizza every night.
And sugar.
Yeah.
Sugar's public enemy number 1 right now.
I'm right there with you. Sugar's not bad for you, but in the doses that the sad standard American diet is taking it in, yeah, it's bad for you.
It is.
I mean, with the way our world used to consume sugar, I mean, it was a treat that you got on occasion, and a sugar cube was like all you'd get for the day. Now we've got like a 20-ounce Coke with 20 of them in it, and it's crazy. And I agree with you too. From an endocrinologist perspective, when you over consume sugar, what does that do to the body?
Wow. Well, number 1, prediabetes and diabetes, which are rampant and nothing good. There's just all this sugar in your blood, and the cells can't even use it. So it stays in the blood, and it causes a chain reaction of damages. There's probably a million examples, but I'm kind of blanking on them. But I do know that there's really nothing good about sugar. It's a treat.
It is.
It should be a treat.
Yeah, it's a treat. I mean, it releases endorphins in your brain. Like there is like a fun aspect to it, but sugar is not an essential nutrient. You could never eat sugar another day in your life, and you'll survive. That's one of the things I love about the human body, and you'll probably agree with me on this. The human body could never have another carbohydrate as long as you live, and it'll be fine. Carbohydrates. When I tell people that carbohydrates are not an essential nutrient, what? I would probably die. Like, no, actually, you wouldn't. I mean, you have gluconeogenesis. You have all these processes in the body. Your body is built to survive. That's its primary number 1 function, is to survive and replicate. Like, that's what the meat suit we live in is here to do. And so many people they're surprised with how well the body does that. And even with like such things, when somebody goes on a diet and their metabolism adjusts and their body becomes more efficient on less calories, and it's amazing the things the human body can do. And when you have it adapting, like the human body now is adapting to crazy levels of sugar because, okay, well, this is the new normal. Like, I have to adjust to it. And, you see the insulin kicking up, and yeah, diabetes is reaching epidemic rates. I think in Mexico right now, childhood diabetes is an epidemic.
And it never even existed when I was starting my training. Type 2 diabetes is associated with obesity, and you didn't see it in children. Now, like, it's not unusual for a 13-year-old to have type 2 diabetes.
Oh, no.
And they're a little pudgy.
Yeah. Oh, almost always.
Yeah.
Yeah, type 1, okay. Like, we understand
That's
that.
different.
It's completely different. Type 2, it's a product of the choices you're making, what would you say, 99% of the time? And with type 2 diabetes, would you say that in a lot of cases, unless it's really, really severe, it's reversible?
Absolutely.
So just for the audience out there, how can someone go about reversing most if it's not too severe diabetes?
Well, you're going to want to keep your blood sugar normal, which basically means you're going to cut back on sugar and even excess sweet fruits. Like, you don't want to eat a whole lot of sweet fruits. You can have some every day, but not a whole lot. The what happens is the body's insulin gets inefficient. It's what they call insulin resistance.
Right.
And the body can heal itself if you give it the right situation and
You hear that? The
circumstances.
body can heal itself.
It's wonderful.
It's amazing.
So you have to eat good food. Yeah. And then the diabetes will come under control. And essentially, if it's under control, you don't have it.
Right.
But if you eat the same way you ate before, it'll come right back.
It will. I mean, you can't just continue the lifestyle you have and just take metformin and say, hey, everything's going to be great because I got my medication now. It used to drive me crazy when I would see, like when I first started working in health and fitness, you just become more aware of what's going on around you. And I would see people, oh, I can have whatever I want tonight. I got my medication with me.
Oh, dear.
I'm like, do you realize what you just said? Like, I'm going to be stupid because I have this fix-it pill. Like, that just does not make any sense to me. But, hey, that's America. We need some immediate gratification, right? I want to talk to you about this because I think this is a newer term that's just now coming up, especially in the anti-aging world. Time Magazine posted about it last year. Actually had an article about mitochondrial dysfunction.
It's so wonderful. Our mitochondria, we have mitochondria in every cell. They're like floating around inside every cell of our body, except for the red blood cells. But they are energy factories.
Right.
And they make something called ATP, which is the energy that our body uses. Every cell, it may be a brain cell, it's going to do something different than a kidney cell or a gut cell or skin cell, but they all have a nucleus and they all have mitochondria, and mitochondria produce the energy for the skin cell to be a skin cell. That's why sometimes when if you fix something in one type of cell, it'll extrapolate to all types of cells because they all kind of are similar. And it's all controlled genetically by survival genes. We have survival genes, and if they're turned on and supplied with what they need, they're the ones that will heal the body. They send messages to other molecules that find out what's amiss and fix it.
So what are the survival genes? Is that like antioxidants?
Yeah, they make antioxidants.
Okay.
Survival genes have on and off switches, and they can get turned off with time and aging and things like that. But they can be turned back on with certain foods.
Right.
And when they're turned on, these survival genes can make something called an antioxidant enzyme. So when you take an antioxidant like fruit juice, it's great. Vitamin C, it's great. That's called a direct antioxidant.
Right.
One molecule will neutralize one free radical, and the free radicals are the bad guys in our body.
Correct.
So then there was a decade or so where we were saying, well, we need to take more antioxidants. And people were really loading up on vitamin A and vitamin E, and
Oh yeah.
all of a sudden they started getting sick and dying because it was too much of a good thing. You can't just take more and assume that it's going to be better. But if you turn on the antioxidant enzyme production, an enzyme does its thing. It will neutralize a million free radicals a second.
Wow.
As
Well,
opposed,
that's a big difference.
Yeah, as opposed to one free radical and done and gone, washed out.
So instead of throwing a Dixie cup at a house fire, now we're turning on the hose.
That's right, the fire hose. So the antioxidant enzymes are millions of times per second more effective than taking an antioxidant. So we want to make antioxidants in the form of enzymes. The other wonderful thing about enzymes, if you're a nerd like us, you know that they do their thing without being used up.
Right.
They do it over and over and over. And then when they're not needed, they just rest and they get out of the way. But then when they're needed, they're there. They're still there, and they come back and they do it over and over and over. Most of the antioxidant enzymes producing genes, they can be turned on for a couple weeks at a time.
Okay. So let's let's kind of pull this like all together because we started out on mitochondrial health and
Oh
then
yeah.
went well no you're and the reason I want to bring this up is because it's all directly correlated with each other. Your cell in itself has of course a nucleus, but it has mitochondria in it, and the mitochondria is constantly producing energy. So when you look at it, let's just say like a car engine, you want that car engine to be running as efficiently. You want it to be well oiled, have the proper gas, like just have that engine running as efficiently as possible. So your mitochondria, when you think about it, that's the engine of your cell. It's what's producing the energy.
Right.
But like with any engine, guys, it puts off exhaust.
Exactly.
And that's what she's talking about. She's talking about, okay, your mitochondria, we have a lot of dysfunction in the world when it comes to mitochondria. That's what the Time magazine article is talking about, even leading to such things as cancer. So you need that mitochondria to be working as effectively as possible, but when that engine is running on all 8 cylinders, it's putting on even more exhaust. And that's where you start talking about the survival genes coming in and taking care of that exhaust.
That's right. That's free radicals, molecules called free radicals, which are very reactive and they want to steal electrons and damage cells, but they can be minimized. You know, that's the exhaust from the energy production is free radical damage or cellular damage.
Right. And you know, I read some new science out there, and it's not really new science, but I think it's just now, if I'm correct in saying this, I think it was just now like being taught in medical school, something called Nrf2 activation, like Nrf2 activation. And it's coming up a lot when we talk about oxidative stress and free radicals. Can you explain what exactly Nrf2 activation is?
Nrf2 is it's an abbreviation for a long word, but it is one of those molecules that activates the antioxidant enzyme production or the survival genes.
Okay.
And it's in every cell. That's why when you activate Nrf2, it's going to do something different in the brain or in the kidney, but you can activate both places with the same activator.
Right.
So there are things that we know activate Nrf2, and that's probably I'm going to say this, the medicine of the future is where medicine should and will be heading. A really big part of it is going to be Nrf2 activation. There are other activators that they're discovering, but Nrf2 is big, really big.
Right. Because I've seen like it's starting to come up now, that Nrf2 pathway to really combat the free radicals and turn on the fire hose to combat the free radicals. And what's crazy is now that we're sitting here talking, you learned about inflammation first in '88 when you were in school. And of course, they call it something different now, now that they're just seriously calling it oxidative stress. But guys, for you at home, like really what we're talking about, I know we're getting kind of nerdy right now, but really what we're talking about is longevity and extending life. And with oxidative stress, your cells are basically breaking down. And as your cells break down, that's what causes aging
And disease.
and disease. So we're talking about actually extending life. I myself, you know, y'all know, my audience knows me out there. I love life, and I love everything around me, and I love just this experience, this journey. So I want to live a long time, but more importantly than living a long time, I want quality of life for a long time. That to me is more important. I don't want to live to be 150 years if I can't do anything, if my brain's dead and I'm low functioning. Like that's not a quality of life. I want a quality of life for a long, long time because this life is fun. It's enjoyable. So when it comes to what we're talking about right now with mitochondrial health and oxidative stress, do you think like that new science of studying those two and activating those two, do you think that that's going to be the future of longevity?
Oh, it already is.
It already is.
There's a pretty recent study. It was done in mice, but it showed that Nrf2 activation extends life in that mammal species. So pretty much if that's how we do research. We start with the mice and the
Right,
rats,
yeah.
and because they're mammals, they have a brain and a heart and lungs and skin, and if it works for them, it's worth keeping on looking at it.
Exactly.
And it definitely extended life in those mice. So the Nrf2 activation did. So that's
Wow.
a big area of promise.
That's huge. I mean, I want to extend my life. I really do.
And health span. It's lifespan and health span. That's what you're saying. Quality of life.
Quality.
Exactly.
And so are they saying the same thing right now about mitochondrial function?
There are studies now underway. I don't think a whole lot of that is completed yet. The last time I was talking to one of the researchers, she said those kind of things take 3 years, and we've got about 1 year in, so it's going to be
Gotcha.
another year or two maybe.
So is the preliminary research promising? I love it. I love the look on her face. Yeah, guys, because what we're talking about is really underlying health. If you're into the health and wellness world, and you're doing your research on what foods to eat and how you should be eating diet-wise, they're all talking about like antioxidants. I mean, that's one of the biggest hot terms that people are talking about right now. And they're always talking about, hey, eat this to get more antioxidants in. Make sure you eat your broccoli. Make sure you eat your vitamin C foods, because you're trying to take in more antioxidants, because they now know the adverse effects of free radicals. But what Doc here is talking about is a clear distinction between supplementation, which taking the antioxidants, eating the antioxidants, and it's combating on a 1-to-1 ratio, correct?
Correct.
Versus activating that Nrf2 pathway, that now you're combating at a rate of 1 million a second.
Because you're making antioxidants. Your body's making them. It's not what you're taking. You take the activator, and your body makes the antioxidant.
I love that. I love that. So guys, activate, don't supplement.
That's right.
I love that. So Doc, if you had to, in wrapping up, give the audience one tip to improve their quality of life, what would it be?
Eliminate sugar as much as possible. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I'm right there with you. I actually really agree with you. Because in my health coaching, and just like you in your doctor practice, you see it. You see the adverse effects. I always love coaching one of my clients through a good sugar detox, and it really is a detox. They have the headaches, and they feel like crap, and their energy's down, and they're wondering what's wrong with me. I'm like, well, you're addicted to sugar.
It is addicting.
It's very addicting. They, I'm sure you know the study. When you combine fats and sugars together in foods, they actually gave rats some high sugary fat foods, and they gave rats cocaine. And they let them choose which one they would rather have. And I think it was almost above 85% of the time the rats chose the food over cocaine. So that tells us that when you combine fats and sugars together, it's pretty much more addicting than cocaine. I would say that's a problem. And what's even more crazy is our government does a really good job of regulating cocaine. Not so much the more addicting, the probably more harmful sugars and fat combination. So yeah, you're right. It's really hurting people right now.
It would be nice if companies would make healthy things, organic stuff to eat more, and it was affordable. The stevia, isn't sugar, and it's like the best of the artificial sweeteners.
Yeah, that's the one
but
I use.
Some of them are really, really bad, like aspartame is terrible.
Right.
But if you really have to have a little fix of something sweet, try to get it with stevia.
Yeah, and in the morning when I'm fasting and I drink coffee, I put stevia in it. Just because I need to kill a little bit of that bitter coffee taste. But no, I use stevia. I used to use it a lot when I was cooking, and eating healthy. I love eating healthy. We were at a little social the other night, and I'm literally eating just fresh broccoli without any ranch like most people put on. Like, I'm just eating fresh broccoli. Like, I love eating like that, but let's be honest, I'm a fat kid at heart. I love my sweets. And stevia is actually my preferred sweetener just because it is all natural. And I haven't seen any adverse effects on your stomach lining, your gut microbiome, like you see with a lot of other artificial sweeteners. So, okay, guys, be easy on the sugar coming from the doctor. So, Dr. Bev, I really, really appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you, Robby. I enjoyed it. It was fun.
Absolutely, and I hope our listeners out there got some knowledge from this, guys. We definitely threw out some some heady topics, some pretty big topics on how to extend life, and I mean that's a big freaking deal. So I definitely appreciate you coming on today and sharing your knowledge. Guys, you can reach out to Dr. Bev. I know she's on Facebook, and I'll put her Facebook link in the show description. But thank you so much for coming on today.
Just have to thank you again. It was so much fun, and I just feel like I've released all the things that were eating me. I feel like I've accomplished something.
Love it.
Okay.
Guys, as always, go check out the Biohacked Life Tribe on Facebook. That's where you can join our community for all the latest news. And if you want to support this podcast, please like and share. But more importantly, join the Rise Up Health Initiative, where we are promoting mental health in schools. Please do your part if you enjoy this content and you're getting value from it. But until the next episode, please go love and change the world. Bye, guys.